Welcome to a new Voltlog. In this video I'm going to show you my method of soldering BGA chips, because in the previous video where I showed the eMMC to microSD card adapter PCB, I mentioned I don't use any stencil for soldering this WF-BGA 153 package. I'm also going to be showing you a method for easily checking if this BGA chip is soldered correctly or not onto the PCB. So let's start by talking about the BGA package that I used in this project. It's the WF-BGA 153, and this package has 153 lead-free balls. Each is 0.3 mm in diameter, and the pitch between the balls is 0.5 mm. Now the footprint that I used has 0.35 mm pads for each of these balls, which means that when you consider the 0.5 mm pitch, in between pads you are left with just 0.15 mm, which is roughly 6 mil. You basically can't route any tracks in there using any of the standard PCB services. PCBWay, for example, which is the sponsor of this video, has the capability to manufacture a 2 mil track with a 2 mil clearance, part of their advanced capability service. So theoretically it is possible to route 2 mil tracks with 2 mil spacing in between the BGA pads. However, you should expect the cost for such a PCB to be higher. That's why you'll see no such thing in my design. I wanted this PCB to be manufacturable through the standard service. As you can see in this close-up shot obtained through my trinocular microscope, the BGA packages come with lead-free balls already attached. This is why I can get away with soldering this package without using a solder stencil or any additional solder paste, as long as you follow some simple rules which I'm going to explain next. But first, let me ask you for a quick favor. If you just smash that like button, it would help immensely, because the YouTube algorithm will recommend this video to a larger audience if I get more interactions with the viewers, like receiving more likes. So rule number one for this method to work is to have a high quality PCB with ENIG coating, which ensures good surface leveling. I'm not saying it's impossible to do with other surface finishes, I'm just saying it makes the process easier if you have ENIG coating, because the pads will have an even surface, so there is a lower risk for parts of the ball grid array to be sitting lower or higher depending on how level the PCB surface is. Rule number two is to use a good quality gel flux. Once again, I'm not saying this can't be done using the lower quality cheap flux you can get from AliExpress, but the whole process goes much better if you're using a high quality flux like this genuine Amtech Gel Flux. Don't order this stuff from AliExpress. It's made in the United States of America, so it doesn't make sense for you to be able to obtain it for cheap from China. That's most certainly counterfeit goods. The genuine stuff will flow better and will ensure the surfaces have the best possible chance for soldering. And another key factor here is to use just enough flux to spread a thin layer across all pads on the PCB. You don't want to be using too much flux, because that can cause it to bubble up while heating up, which might cause our thin and light chip to float on it, preventing the balls from making a connection with the pads on the PCB. And rule number three is to get perfect alignment when you place the chip on the board, because the pads and the space between them is so small, it's critical you get the chip perfectly aligned to the board. Make sure your footprint has some silkscreen alignment markings and you get your chip perfectly centered in those lines. Unlike smaller SMT components, the lack of solder paste and the size of the BGA package is working against us, so the package will not self-align during reflow. If you follow these three simple rules, you are now ready for reflow, and I tend to use a combination of a hot plate plus hot air from above. In the case of these microSD card adapters, I had the hot plate set for 230 degrees Celsius. You can go up to 240, you might need to go up to 240 because of the lead-free process, but I find that this temperature works fine for me. And I also applied some hot air from above once the hot plate reached above 200 degrees Celsius. I had my hot air station set for 350 degrees Celsius, and a pretty low volume of air. It's also important that after reflow is completed, you let the board cool down slowly. That's why you'll see me here lift it up slowly from the hot plate to avoid introducing any thermal shocks that might cause cracks into the newly created solder joints. Now, I'm not saying this is a perfect process, but it works for me with incredibly high reliability, and usually if there is an issue you can fix it by adding some more flux and trying a second reflow while realigning the chip. In fact, every time I had an issue, it was because I didn't have the chip perfectly aligned from the start. So now you have your BGA chip soldered. How can you be sure it's soldered properly and you have a connection for all of the used signal? Well, there is a simple technique which you can use, but you can only trust the results if you have no other devices populated on the board interfacing the BGA chip signals. So let's think about it for a second. Every semiconductor device has some form of I/O circuit protection to protect the chip from potential ESD applied to the input, and typically these protection features are composed of a pair of diodes which go between the chip power supply rails. So imagine you have your multimeter set to diode measuring mode, and this pin is the BGA pin we are trying to measure. Well, if we have a good connection with our PCB, a good solder joint, we should be able to measure one of these internal diodes by connecting the negative lead from the multimeter to the VCC point on the PCB and the positive probe to a point on the PCB connected to that pad we are trying to measure, completing the circuit this way for measuring the internal protection diode through the PCB. Or the other way around if you'd like, positive lead on ground, negative lead at the I/O pin for measuring the other diode. If we can measure the diode this way for each individual pad and we get similar values, it means our soldering is good. Like I mentioned, this only works if you don't have other devices populated on the board, which might throw off your reading. So it's a method that you can use for bringing up your own hardware, but not so much if you're doing a repair on a board which is fully populated, like a laptop motherboard or a smartphone motherboard. But on the other hand, if you have a functional board and you are repairing it, you will know if the BGA is soldered okay, if it turns on and performs as expected. So armed with these two techniques, I think there is no reason for the average hobbyist to be afraid of BGA packages, at least not down to this size of ball grid array with this kind of pitch. These are totally doable at hobby level without the need of expensive specialized gear or any complicated process. I will be placing links in the description below for all of the tools and supplies I used in this video, so make sure you check them out, and you can also find reviews for these tools on my channel, which I will also link in the description below. Thank you for watching this video. I would really appreciate your feedback in the comments. Let me know what your methods are, or if this video helped you to successfully solder a BGA chip. I would love to hear about it. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on Patreon with as little as $1 per month, and you will be getting some benefits like early access to videos or behind the scenes stuff that I sometimes share. I'll be seeing you next time.